America,
that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America.
Here comes another one. Down, everybody. All right. Continue repeating after me. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So help me God.
The National Broadcasting Company presents Tales of the Foreign Service. A feature in NBC's University of the Air, written and produced in cooperation with the State Department, dedicated to the personnel of the Foreign Service. The material used in this series is based upon the confidential files of the State Department, much of it never before released to the public.
My name is Tom Estes, and I think my experiences in the Foreign Service have been pretty unique and exciting. In the first place, the way I got into the State Department is rather unusual. I was serving as a Marine Corps guard in the American Embassy in Peking in 1938, when Colonel Marston called me into his office.
Would you come into my office a moment, Sergeant?
Yes, sir.
Please be at ease. Have a seat.
Thank you, sir.
Cigarette?
Yes, sir.
Light?
Thanks.
The American Embassy picked the right man, Estes, when they made you a guard here at Peking. You've been noticed.
Thank you, sir.
You know what's been happening in Nanking, the Marco Polo Bridge incident?
Yes, Colonel Marston, I've been reading about it.
It's pretty dangerous down there with open warfare between Chinese and Japanese. Estes, I need a man to go to Nanking and round up all the American citizens in that area. How does that appeal to you?
When do I go, sir?
That was my wife and baby that went in that first truck, Sergeant. Please, I've got to leave and try to catch up with them.
Now, just be calm, Mr. Brown. There'll be another vehicle along in a few minutes. You've got to stay here in this enclosure with the rest of these people and leave when they do.
But suppose we're separated. Maybe we'll be lost from each other for days.
All these trucks will rendezvous at the same place. You'll be with your family by nightfall. You try to leave now and follow that truck on your own, you may never get through Nanking alive.
But I feel so helpless, Sergeant. Can't I do something till the next truck arrives?
Well, yes you can. Suppose I put you in charge of these Americans we've already rounded up. You can help me keep them from milling around the danger areas. Then I'll be free to leave this desk and do some investigating on my own. Will you do that?
All right. Yes.
And keep the flag flying. If any other American sees it, he'll find his way here. We've got to get every American out of Nanking as soon as possible. Finally, all United States citizens in the vicinity of Nanking were tracked down, listed, and evacuated. Cecil Lyon, who was third secretary at Peking, helped with the job. And somehow, at last, it was done. Lyon recommended me for the Foreign Service as a result of this job. And when I returned to Peking...
Yes?
Sir, Sergeant Estes reporting as ordered.
At ease, Sergeant. Tell me, how do you like your job here in the embassy, Estes? I mean, now that you've had some service in the Marine Corps, would you like to stay on, or suppose your government could use you in another job?
Well, sir, I joined the Marines because
You wanted to see a little action. We all did, but suppose you could render a greater service out of uniform.
Just how could that be, sir?
Estes, the State Department has requested you for the Foreign Service. You just completed a fine job at Nanking, and we're all impressed.
Thank you, sir.
In short, the Marine Corps has approved your release. And if you're worried about not seeing action, don't be. The Foreign Service can be just as dangerous and difficult a job as the Marine. In fact, that's the very reason you've been chosen. Good luck.
And so I joined the Foreign Service. At first as a clerk. But I decided I would study and take the exams and try to become a Foreign Service officer. My first assignment as a clerk was in Bangkok, Siam, where I served for several years. Then one day, in February 1942... Any mail for me, sir?
Looking for a letter, Estes? Well, then you haven't heard from your Foreign Service exams, eh?
No, sir.
Well, I'm afraid we're all out of luck for mail. Japs are moving in. There's a rumor that they're already in the city. Well, what's that?
That's a staff car at the curb.
Open the door.
It's the Japs. What does this mean?
It means, gentlemen, that you are prisoners of the Japanese government. Do not make a move.
I was interned for 7 months by the Japanese. Then, in September 1942, I was repatriated and found at long last that I had passed my State Department examinations and had been appointed as a Foreign Service officer. I was not a college graduate, but I had been able to take correspondence courses, and occasionally I had found someone to tutor me in subjects I needed as a background. Well, after Siam and the prison camp, my next most important assignment and experiences took place in North Africa, in Algiers. In August 1944, I was assigned to the staff of the Supreme Allied Commander, Mediterranean Theater. My duties here in the office of the political advisor, Robert Murphy, were varied and challenging. For example, my major task was the handling of problems pertaining to prisoners of war. I was the State Department's representative in connection with several trips to the SS Gripsholm between North Africa and Spain to exchange German prisoners of war for British and Americans. I had a personal interest in the Gripsholm because she had repatriated me after my internment by the Japanese. When I went down to see her off on the first voyage, there seems to be some delay, Colonel Crane. Do you know what could be keeping the rest of the Germans? I believe there are still 27 to be put on board.
Oh, haven't you heard, Estes? Joint Medical Board's not permitting them to go.
Not permitting them to go? Why not?
Oh, it seems they've been declared technically ineligible for repatriation, whatever that means. They weren't very specific.
So, have they been put in quarantine?
No, it hasn't gone that far.
That means 27 of our men will be held up in Spain.
Yes, situation's very bad.
Certainly is. In fact, I think we'll hold up the sailing of the Gripsholm until the medical board's a little more specific. Those 27 men must be shipped, or we've got to know the reason why. I had a battle on my hands with this joint medical board. But after I had given them assurance that these men would have adequate medical attention on board ship, and also adequate medical facilities awaiting them in Barcelona, and that they would not be in jeopardy during the sea voyage, the medical board gave in on this point. The 27 Germans went aboard, and I heaved a sigh of thanks. But no sooner was this difficulty overcome when another cropped up. Standing on the dock, I spied a member of the intelligence corps coming down the gangplank. Lieutenant, may I speak to you a moment?
Yes? What is it?
Aren't you from G2, an interrogation officer?
That's right.
May I ask what you were doing aboard the Gripsholm?
Now, look here. Security officers are free to go where they please.
I'm a representative of the State Department, Lieutenant. This ship is neutral ground. I have the right to know why you went on board in this unauthorized way. Have you a pass?
I don't need a pass.
Have you been interrogating anybody on board?
What if I have?
Don't you realize you've violated the international code?
Now, look, we pick up information against the enemy in whatever way we can.
This is one way that's illegitimate. Did you enter on your own authority, or were you so ordered? I thought so. Well, I'll see your commanding officer about this, Lieutenant. These men are immune from questioning, and you must not go aboard again. The point was that if we didn't live up to the spirit of the laws of neutrality, we couldn't expect our enemies to do so. Naturally, we wouldn't want indiscriminate questionings of our prisoners of war by the Nazis or Japs because, for one thing, their methods were, to say the least, a little more unpleasant than ours. Furthermore, an exchange ship is a piece of property belonging not to America or Great Britain or to any side in a conflict, but to a neutral cause where the interests of no belligerent enter in. If the status of this kind of ship were violated, we might be unable to get Red Cross supplies to areas that needed them, and we could expect no real safety for passengers going either way. These are laws we must observe, even when it defeats our own immediate ends. Well, at long last, the Gip's home was ready for departure. It finally was to get away that night, but I saw with surprise that it was blacked out, contrary to rules laid down for such vessels. Before the gangplank was taken up, I stopped Colonel Crean again. Why haven't the lights been turned on aboard the Gip's home, Colonel Crean?
Orders from headquarters, Mr. Estes. Algiers observes the blackout, and all ships in the harbor must conform.
But this is an exchange ship. It's necessary that all lights be turned on, the floodlights as well, so there can be no mistaking its purpose by enemy aircraft.
Nevertheless, the Gip's home, if lighted, would be like a marker to lead the enemy to Algiers. Here's the order.
But why hasn't this matter been taken up before? I have my orders too, Colonel Crean.
Presumably, the lights will be turned on as soon as she's underway.
Is it so ordered? Have I your assurance the vessel will be lighted during the voyage?
Yes, it is so ordered.
Several days later, when the Gip's home was due back from Spain with our own American and British repatriates, we decided to give them a royal welcome. We rounded up the good-looking Red Cross girls in Algiers, and all the biggest army brass were on hand. There were coffee, donuts, cigarettes, candy, everything we could think of to make our men happy. There were even bundles of the Stars and Stripes newspaper and the British paper, the Union Jack. The Chief of Staff of the North African Theater, Major General Barr, lined up our 65 Americans.
Company! Equip! At ease. Men, I will dispense with formalities. This is a proud moment for all of us to welcome you back to America, because where we are, wherever Americans are, is America while we are at war. I am here to present you with as distinguished a medal as the United States of America has to offer. The Purple Heart. Each of you is entitled to wear it.
And because I'd helped in my small way to bring them back, it was a proud moment for me, too. As I talked to these men, I realized what it meant to come home in time of war. A little later, I saw how even the Germans, our enemies, felt about conditions in our own prison camp. A letter sent to my chief's office one day was unexpectedly handed me as a special assignment.
The German legation has the honor to request the Division of Foreign Interests to have the British and North American governments informed of the following. For a considerable time, unwelcome news of the treatment of prisoners of war in Northwest Africa has come to the German government. From many sources of information, it has become evident that
the care of these prisoners of war leaves much to be desired.
They are inadequately furnished with the necessary articles of clothing or not provided at all.
Their personal belongings have been stolen from them. Living conditions are so poor, soldiers daily collapse and become ill.
Prisoners of war are cruelly punished.
If German prisoners of war are so treated, then prisoners of war under German jurisdiction can expect no better treatment.
It was my business to investigate this German protest. In all fairness, I found that in some instances the complaint was justified. However, these cases were traced to inadequate or careless guards who had not been properly instructed in the obligations of prisoners of war under the Geneva Convention. Irregularities in these camps, particularly in the prison camp at Barapa, were quickly corrected, and the German government so informed. It was not an assignment I liked best of all, but I felt somehow that if I could bring about fair treatment for a German soldier, I might be helping an American somewhere to be sufficiently clothed, to be warm and comfortable, to be fed enough, and perhaps even to be given an occasional cigarette. I was occupied with prisoners of war for some time, as a matter of fact, until the landings in Italy. Then I was sent to Naples for the naturalizing of non-citizen soldiers of the United States Army. English, Irish, Poles, men who had enlisted in our army but had never become citizens of our country. One night, soon after I had arrived in this battered Italian city, an incident occurred. It was one of the most interesting experiences I had in the Foreign Service. I had been given quarters in an old Neapolitan hotel, and that night, as I was preparing to climb the stairs...
I beg your pardon. Are you Mr. Estes?
Huh? Oh, yes.
It's frightfully late, I know. My word, it's midnight. I had no idea.
Well, it doesn't matter. What can I do for you?
And I've just come entirely across Italy. I heard a member of the American Foreign Service was here. But listen to that plane out there. I think it followed me all the way. It was a ghastly ride in that Jeep.
Are you American or British, Major?
It is a bit confusing, isn't it? For me, too. You see, I was a British major in North Africa. I was decommissioned and then commissioned again in the United States Army. That's why I wear your uniform.
Oh, I see. Well, what's so urgent, Major?
I don't really suppose you should call me Major, should you? My insignia, you know.
Oh, you're a chaplain.
Right. I heard you'd been sent for the purpose of naturalizing those who wanted to become United States citizens.
That's right.
Wonderful idea. I want to become one myself. That's why I made this hazardous ride.